Former President Donald Trump is being indicted this week on 34 felony charges, some of which include using too much orange spray tan, being bad, and being a man. Possibly a man who paid hush money payments to a porn star. Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan District Attorney in charge of the case, put out a statement explaining that he didn't waste time prosecuting small petty crimes like felony assault or rape, or keeping repeat offenders in jail because that's not where the true interest of the people lies. Instead, he likes to fantasize about bringing a big orange man in handcuffs and taking that silly little photo, after which he can take a copy and draw on clown makeup and a wig, because only a clown could run a multi-billion-dollar company, beauty pageants, and a successful bid for president with no political experience. Former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi joined in, commenting on the indictment by saying, quote, "I'm heartened to see that not even the president is above the law, and finally being brought to trial, where he can be found guilty for having sexual relations with that woman, and paying her to be quiet about it, and maybe keep coming back." Maybe that was another president. Anyways, Republicans responded by saying things like, "Imagine if the shoe was on the other foot, and this would be the real end of democracy, and the real authoritarians of the party arresting a former president," to which the Democrat Party responded, "It can't be the end of democracy because we're still in charge." After Trump heard that a Republican politician was defending him against the indictment, he said that he was a very nice guy, probably a hard worker who was doing a good job, maybe one of the best jobs that had ever been done. Once learning that it was actually Ron DeSantis who said that, he immediately retracted the statement and followed it with a statement saying the only way that Ron DeSanctimonious could even support him is because the Don helped him out, and he should watch his mouth. When asked what DeSanctimonious meant, he said he wasn't quite sure, but it sounded cool. And plus, ungrateful Ron was always acting like he's better than I am or something. Even though I made him. I made him, damn it. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm Thomas Hodge, and this is Stand Up. I'm a conservative on a relatively liberal college campus, and I'm sure you'll be shocked to hear that there's not a lot of voice for conservative opinions and thoughts here on campus. And something else that I've noticed is that we're lacking a cohesive vision when it comes to what it's okay to believe and if you can even believe it. And so I wanted to start up this channel specifically with the name Stand Up as a friendly reminder to my fellow Republicans and conservatives, or even my counterparts on the other side, that when you do believe in something, you should probably stand for what you believe in. We can't be afraid of the mob as conservatives. We can't be afraid of losing friends. And I know it's difficult, trust me, I know. But the point is that standing up for what you believe is right has to be worth it. Otherwise, you might as well not make a stand. And so I open up the show with a little bit of satire there, in case you couldn't tell. Those aren't actually real Nancy Pelosi quotes. Please don't sue me. We don't have legal here yet. But I open up poking fun at former President Trump because, I know that will probably turn away a number of potential viewers who would otherwise watch the show, and I get it. I know. I liked Trump, okay? But I'm not an ideologue, okay? I'm not going to follow Trump blindly. I liked what he did as president. I thought he did a good job. But also, I'm not going to follow him blindly. I like Governor DeSantis. I think he's doing a good job in Florida, but I'm not going to follow him blindly. I hate to move into more somber news after trying to keep a bit of a lighter opening, but, what would the American news cycle be without terrible tragedy? Of course, you know about the Nashville shooting that occurred Monday last week on March 27th. There's more information coming out about the circumstances surrounding it, as well as further motives for the shooter. I'm interested in looking at today is some of the responses that have been given in light of this shooting, and warn you that I'm here not to report the news, but I'm here to offer commentary, give you my thoughts on what I think is going on here and whether it's good and bad. So I want to start out by saying, phenomenal job to the Nashville Police Department. They are true heroes in the full sense of that term. We overuse that word far too much in society, but if anyone's a hero, it's them. How they handled the situation both during and after, providing information to the public. I wish they would release a manifesto, but again, what I'm going over today, that's neither here nor there. So going into looking more at the more Republican and conservative response to this shooting, I have to admit that the moderates and some of the squish Republicans have done a relatively good job at actually referring to the true pronouns of the shooter. So, not using the euphemisms or their transgender identity. But even still, I find myself speaking with a number of self-fashioned Republican or conservative students here on campus, and they kind of give me this look of shock or condemnation when I mention that Audrey Hale was a female. And it's funny because, I made a joke about Trump not knowing what sanctimonious means at the opening of the show. But sanctimony is actually a tool used by the left. It's kind of guilt-tripping people and, saying if you use these pronouns, if you say the right words, you're more moral or you're better than these people. And I just think that's not true. But some of the responses I've gotten when I use the true words to refer to her is, I know what she did was bad, but, we still respect her identity, or at least refer to her as a transgender male. And I get frustrated with these people, particularly when they call themselves conservatives, because when a conservative says something like that to me, I just want to ask them, what are you conserving? And that's kind of what I wanted to take a look at today, because you have people who call themselves conservatives, but again, you're not quite sure what it is they're trying to preserve or keep. So this has been a problem that the modern conservative movement has faced really since the 50s and 60s, since conservatism was beginning to take hold. For too long, conservatives lacked political vision and when it comes to the political order. So you have the libs who are perfectly fine with wielding political power, with wielding social power and pressure, and they're willing to do just about anything it takes, however long it takes, to achieve what they want. On the other hand, you have a conservative or Republican Party who's kind of nervous to exercise any kind of government power. They don't want to be called authoritarian or racist or homophobic or things like that simply by exercising government power. And this has been a tool of the left. And I understand where conservatives are worried about fighting government overreach with further government policy. I understand that, but this is actually where I differ from a majority of these small government conservatives. When it comes to limited government, I'm the first in line. I don't like how much power the deep state has gotten, really just kind of subsidizing the power of Congress. Congress doesn't do as much as they used to anymore because the deep state and all these regulations and stuff take care of that, so Congress doesn't even do much anymore. Right? So when it comes to that, I'm perfectly fine with cleaning house. However, it's important to keep in mind that we're a large country. And when it comes to diversity, not in the sense of the buzzword term the left uses it for, but when you actually look at our country, we are a very diverse population. We have people from all over the world, all different cultures. So when it comes to a governing body on a national level, you do need some kind of form or tool for a cohesive society. So when it comes to the size of the country and the size of the government, I'm not opposed to having a larger government so far as it's limited. However, a limited government does not mean that you don't do anything, right? So when it comes particularly to making laws, we are capable of knowing right from wrong. So you know that a law could be good or it could be bad. We're not just floating around in space, right? There is an objective moral order, and laws can or cannot follow that, right? So recently, an example of this is what we've seen in these red states as bills are being passed to ban public drag shows and ban them from performing in public or where children can be present. And there's been outrage all across the left. How can you do this? How can you ban this? But what we know about drag shows is that often they're sexually lewd. They're dressed in ways that are provocative. They perform dance movements that are provocative. You would not let minors into a strip club. Similarly, I would not want to let any minor into a drag show simply because of the kind of performance that they're doing, right? And so you get all these moderates who say, oh, it's too much power to try and regulate this, just let people be free. And again, I wonder, what are you conserving by being against not letting kids go into drag shows, right? Because again, we're capable of knowing what is right and what is wrong, what is true, false, good, bad. And so when I look at a law that forbids children from being in attendance at publicly or in public shows where people will be dressed lewdly or performing provocative sexual movements, I look at that and I say, well, it seems to me that by preventing children from going to these shows, we're actually conserving or preserving their virtue and their innocence when it comes to these foul things that we don't necessarily want to be in public eye. And I'm in favor of something like that. So when it comes to conservatives actually exercising power, we've been quite successful where we've had a vision. So, right, if you look at Roe v. Wade, it took years and years of work, but we managed to overturn that terrible court ruling, right? and we've kept our Second Amendment rights. This is another place where the conservative movement has had an agenda when it comes to preserving our Second Amendment rights. The left is challenging that right now in the wake of this shooting, quick to politicize everything. But another example that we see of conservatives exercising power with high degrees of success is Governor Ron DeSantis. You see that he's using state power, he's wielding that power to take power away from the public universities, take power away from these public schools. He's cleaning out the academic garbage of CRT. He's removing gender ideology instruction from this so-called Don't Say Gay bill. That's nowhere in the bill, right? All he's doing is he's wielding government power to promote a conservative agenda. And of course, you get the left saying, oh, this is authoritarian. Oh, this is authoritarian. You can't do that. Every time that someone uses government power to achieve something that the left disagrees with, it's authoritarian. Governor DeSantis is not authoritarian. He's simply promoting an agenda that does not go along with the left's agenda, right? So when it comes to using power, it's not actually exercising or wielding power that's bad. It's wielding power for bad things. So if you use government power for good things, it's not bad because you're using power. It's a good use of that power. So I would much rather see government power be used to protect our children, to protect our rights, rather than take them away or put them into some welfare program or super high taxes or something like that. I would rather see state power wielded by someone who has the interests of the people in mind. All of this to say, I applaud the Nashville Police Department for their heroism in the response and handling of the shooting, and as well as their conservation of the truth by using the correct pronouns of the shooter. So the left is just, they're trying to ignore the gender identity of the shooter. It's not important, it's irrelevant. There's been a couple different responses from the media. They're either ignoring the identity entirely or they're carefully correcting the pronoun usage of conservative media. Or they're just completely, this is blackout. They're not interested in what's going on in the shooter or anything like that. And of course, the transgender left, being the raging narcissists that they are immediately trying to turn this into somehow them being the victim. So that's how we get to the scene, right? You'll see we have a group of transgender advocates. They're activists. They are chanting, "Protect trans kids." Note that they're storming the State House of Kentucky right now. But this isn't a violent insurrection. This isn't an overhaul of the government or anything like that. This is perfectly fine because it's a peaceful protest. Keep in mind, this is happening just days after 6 people, 3 of which were children. So you have 3 9-year-olds who were killed by a trans radical, and immediately this becomes about how transgender people are oppressed and the victims, and they're being killed. They're actually saying that transgender people are being killed. And here we have another clip of, you'll see they're holding up 7 fingers saying 7 victims. You have a trans radical, you have a radicalized female with gender dysphoria who goes into a K-6 private Christian school, and she shoots through the door, she enters the building, and she kills 3 administrators and 3 9-year-old kids. Okay, these are children around the same age as some of my younger siblings, right? Just kills them, and then she gets killed by the cops in response, but she remains the victim of this. So this is absurd. This is what happens when you have a class of people who is untouchable by society standards. So it's kind of like a perversion of the idea that no one's above the law, right? So you have this idea that no one's above the law, so that's what they're trying to get Trump on right now. He's committed all these crimes. They're trying to nail him down. But actually, when it comes down to it, it's the transgender agenda that's above the law here. Because when you think about it, can you criticize this group? You can't criticize them. And if you disagree with them, well, your words are violence, right? And so if your words are violence, then as tragic as the shooting is, I'm not surprised that someone who truly believes that words are violence would go and do something to support. Because if me disagreeing with the notion that men are men and women are women, and that men can't be women and women can't be men. If I simply hold that belief and speak it, then I am actively hurting someone who may feel as though they're in the wrong body, or they may feel as though they're the incorrect gender. And so if I'm perpetuating violence toward these individuals, then the logical conclusion of that is to respond in kind. So if me simply saying that I do not agree with this fact that men can be women, then I'm violent. And so you respond in kind. So that's how you get someone who's been radicalized by this transgender agenda. They come into a school and they shoot people. They kill people. Because if words are violence, then we cannot be surprised when violent words are answered with violent actions. And they continue to play the victim. Because they're always the victim of society, no matter what happens, because words are violence, and they're always victimized by the right, they're always victimized people who don't accept their identity, who don't affirm them. They're the victim. So it doesn't matter what they do. They can go into a school and they can shoot 6 people. They can kill 3 children. And they remain the victim. You have people holding up 7 fingers saying 7 victims. I'm sorry, the only victims here are the 6 innocent lives taken. The murderer who was killed by the police, not a victim. She's exactly what she is. She's a murderer. Now, moving on. So I briefly spoke to the whole thing that's going on right now with Trump. You have a George Soros-backed DA who he can't be bothered to prosecute a single crime. Otherwise, he's not busy stopping murderers, or he's not stopping felony assault or rapists. What he's interested in is he's interested in putting the former president behind bars. He's interested in getting him a pair of handcuffs and carting him away. You can be sure that he's getting a total dopamine trip right now, just at the thought of him being in handcuffs. Of course, that's not going to happen. This is the former president of the United States we're talking about here. He's not going to be put in handcuffs. There's already reports of him. He's receiving special treatment because they've got to factor in the Secret Service and his protection and all this. So he's not being put in handcuffs. They're not taking his mugshot for fear of it being leaked. So, he's already getting special treatment. This whole thing is a circus anyways. But you have people like former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, tweeting about this. He tweets, "The grand jury has acted upon the facts and the law. No one is above the law, and everyone has the right to a trial to prove innocence." Prove innocence. So hopefully the former president will peacefully respect the system, which grants him that right. So I don't know if they didn't have good civics classes back when Nancy Pelosi was in elementary school back in I don't know, when dinosaurs roamed the earth. But that's kind of flipping the U.S. justice system on its head, because the burden of proof falls upon the prosecution. Prosecution has to prove that the defendant is guilty, and the defendant just has to maintain their innocence. But here, you can see that Nancy Pelosi is already assuming that Donald Trump's guilty. So, sure, we can have a trial, but if he's already guilty before going to trial, then this trial's already exactly what it is. It's bread and circuses for the Democrat Party. They've been trying to get this guy for nearly 8 years now. They've thrown everything at him. We're on reruns right now, right? This is over some business misdealings and the hush payment to Stormy Daniels. So, they've already thrown everything at him. They've thrown so much at him that they're going back to the original. They're going back for reruns. It's absurd. And I can tell you, I already err on Trump's side when it comes to things like this, because like I said, they've been after him for years, and nothing has been able to stick. You got the Russia collusion, nothing stuck. You got the payment to Stormy Daniels. They couldn't do that either. So everything they've thrown at this guy has just completely not worked. They're spinning tires here. But just by reading this tweet, a trial to prove innocence, I can already tell I'm not on their side. Whatever outcome Nancy Pelosi wants from this, I want the exact opposite, because clearly she shows a fundamental misunderstanding of the justice system. Not that there's much of a justice system anymore in the United States of America. Earlier on the show, you saw that people were storming the state capitol in Kentucky, advocating for transgender rights, protecting transgender kids. They storm the capitol, they enter. That's perfectly fine. No one's arrested, no one's thrown in prison in solitary confinement. You have them storming the Capitol in Nashville. Ironically, they're storming the Capitol in Nashville, wanting more rights taken away. So you have the people, they're storming government building, and they're not going, give us our rights back. They're going, no, take our rights away. We don't want guns. Give us gun reform, right? It's kind of absurd there. But nothing will happen. Nothing will happen. No one will be thrown in prison. No one will be sent to jail. And there's no system of justice in the United States anymore. And this is just following it to its logical conclusion. If now we have to prove our innocence in a court of law, the justice system means nothing in the United States of America anymore. But that's all for today. Thank you to my friends and family for helping me get this thing started, and shout out to the editing team for hopefully making me look good. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. This is Stand Up with Thomas Hodge.